Tonight is the Rangers Journal night.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Rangers Journal. My name's Kevin, and I am the host for this evening. I will start off by saying that I have shaved off all my hair, and I am the same Kevin that's on every Thursday night. Tonight we are talking about the Enigma, which is Cyriel Dessers. The agenda for the session will be trying to cover off both the positives as well as the negatives towards Cyriel Dessers, and just trying to have an overall balanced view on our number 9. Tonight, first of all, we are joined by Andrew. How you doing, Andrew? You all right?
I'm not bad, Kevin. I'm not bad. Yourself?
I'm not too bad. I'm not too bad. And of course, you're joining us from the Ibrox Channel podcast. Feel free if you want to give us a wee plug on that, mate.
Aye, well, I'm for the Ibrox Channel podcast. I do a podcast on all major podcast stores. I've even tried to hand it the old TikTok now. I'm like a blooming 15-year-old. But yeah, I've got a website, ibroxchannel.co.uk. There's little bits on there. I've had Dino on the pod before. How you doing, Dino? You good, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Good, thanks.
Good man. Good to see you again. But yeah, I've a big follower of the Rangers Journal. You guys do good stuff, so it's an absolute pleasure to be back.
Perfect, mate. It's a pleasure to be on. And everyone that's tuned in and listening, jump over and subscribe and follow Andrew and the Ibrox channel. And Dino, how you doing, mate? You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, buddy. How are you with your new hairdo? That's like you feeling young?
Mate, feeling the cold more than anything, to be fair. I think I've done it at the worst time ever. I think the next day after I shaved it all off, it was absolutely Baltic. So believe it or not, I know since I've been on the pod, my hair's been longer, but this was the style that I was rocking from COVID onwards, man. So I just went back to my roots. I was getting fed up of having to do my hair and blow dry and all that nonsense in the morning. So this is the easier life. We are also going to be joined by Mitch this evening. He said to be minor incident. He said he'll be on in a couple of minutes. So he will be joining us shortly. And he is our Cyriel Dessers enthusiast here at the Rangers Journal. So he's definitely going to be the great addition for that balance overall. I suppose before we go on and start talking about Cyriel Dessers, Andrew, what's your thoughts for the weekend coming up? Are you looking forward to the football being back?
Oh, it is good to be back to club business, isn't it? It's especially after the last game when you've got a defeat like that and you've got to mull it over for 2 weeks. As much as, I do watch a little bit of the international stuff, the Nations League just never really took my fancy, really. But yeah, it's good to be back. It's good to, as well, to be facing a familiar foe. Obviously, they weren't in the league last season, and yeah, it'll be an interesting one to see how the players react, especially after that defeat. So it's not going to be an easy game at all, though, is it?
Yeah, it's always a tough game going up to Tannadice, I think. But I think I'm the same as you. I'm just really looking forward to Rangers being back in action and having some good football to watch at the weekend, hopefully. And Dino, I suppose just on the weekend as well, is it too early for predictions at this point yet? I think we might have lost Dino.
It's understandable. It's not the talk about Dundee United, you see. It's, yeah. Oh, here he is.
There you go, Dino. I don't know if you caught that question, mate.
No.
I was just saying, just talking about the weekend coming up. Is it too early, do you think, to think of any predictions?
Not at all. Not at all. I think the predictions amongst the support will have changed from this week and last week. As the game draws closer, we'll all get more optimistic, won't we? And as to the pessimism that was probably running through everybody's veins after that horrific defeat that we were subjected to. So yeah, I think we'll be a bit more optimistic in terms of how we go into this game. And, hopefully that we have a new number 10 playing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
me and Andrew were just talking about that actually just before we went live there. I think we're hoping that we see an introduction of the new number 10 coming in ahead of Tom Lawrence. We've obviously spent the money on him, so the fingers crossed that he's involved and we start to see something different up top. And I suppose, guys that are joining us through YouTube or on Twitter, feel free to leave us some comments, guys, and ask the guys some questions, all hopefully Cyriel Dessers related, because that is the topic of this evening. I think probably the best place to start then with Cyriel Dessers would be the positive impacts that he brings to the team. So, Andrew, I'll start with yourself. What positives do you think that Cyriel Dessers brings in to the squad at the moment?
Well, to be fair, the obvious one is goals. The way that the season started, we definitely weren't anywhere near the finished article, were we? Some would argue we probably aren't yet either. But looking at our options up top, obviously we signed Enigma, but it came apparent very early on that, he's going to be a bit of a project player. You might not see him straight away. He's going to be built up. Danilo obviously coming back from injury, a long layoff as well. So it was very apparent early on that we were going to be relying on Cyriel Dessers. Didn't really fill fans with a lot of hope, really. But, he did score pretty much, he scored an important goal against Dynamo. And he has scored in most games. So, the most important thing that he's really brought for us so far is goals. And whether we like it or not, he is kind of the informed striker we have at the club at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Kevin said he pays for haircuts as well. Obviously, we've seen the clips coming up.
Do you pay for yours?
I wish, to be fair. This one came out of my own pocket, unfortunately. I know Doug's saying that I've paid homage to Cyriel Dessers getting the same haircut as him. Hopefully tonight's comments isn't all just about my hair. But Cyriel Dessers then, Dino, what's been your thoughts so far of Dessers this season so far?
Speechless.
I don't know if Dino's crashed again. No, he has. He's dropped off. But there's Mitch. Mitch, you've saved the day. Dino's having some technical problems, I think.
Boy. What's going on with the hair, son?
Mate, I think everyone is saying that in the comments. I didn't think it would have got this much attention, to be fair.
Aerodynamics the way forward. Look at you.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. Make myself faster. That's what it is. Try get a starting position with Rangers up top, mate. Try to get myself quicker.
Well, I'm not going to lie. We've got Tierney out on the right. You could be dashing out there on the left.
Aye, well, shaved heads, mate. Will look similar. How are you doing, Mitch?
Always good, mate. You?
Aye, not too bad, mate. Not too bad. I'll come to the question I'd actually just posed to Dino before his internet, I think, dropped off. What do you think the positives have been from Cyriel Dessers so far this season?
I think consistency is probably the biggest thing from him as he's scoring goals on a regular basis. Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. I appreciate that. But probably consistency from him, and you can see that over the summer he's benefited from a proper pre-season. He's fully fit now. And, he looks sharper, he looks leaner, and he looks like he's had a bit more time with those new bodies and the old bodies around him as well. And I think on the field, we're starting to reap the benefits of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think probably a good place to start when talking about the positives of Cyriel Dessers is from his performances last season. So we've got some of these numbers in terms of stats last season. Big thanks to Doug, who's of course in the comments, for pulling these slides together for tonight's pod. So last season in the league, he played 35 games in total, scoring 16 goals, averaging a goal every 143 minutes, which is goals per game of 0.5, 2.9 shots per game, 1.4 of them being on target, big chances missed, which I know we'll touch on later on, which was 27, and goal conversion of being 16%. Andrew, what was your thoughts overall from Dessers last year?
He was our top goal scorer. It was a very mixed bag. Now, of course, it was his first kind of season in Scotland. Obviously, the Beale project, as we'll call it, didn't work out, and he was one of the kind of few players that we were able to utilise a bit more, and especially in an attacking threat, because last season we were left very desolate due to injuries. I think we had about 11 players out at one point, which was just unbelievably shocking. but Dessers was producing the goods. Now, it's quite scary if you look at, obviously you'll break down the stats more in detail, especially big chances missed, but if you look at if he wasn't in that team last season, would we have even finished second? So that's that's saying something. Yeah, there's stuff we can get into about some of his chances when he's one-on-one and got time to think, but when he's got a quick finish to make, he generally does make them. He's a decent goal scorer. He was top goal scorer at Cremonese in the conference the season before, so he's kind of carried some of that form into here, and of course in Europe. He had that fantastic goal against Real Betis where he sent the defender for a hot dog and then just buried it, which I think was a surprise for most people, especially when they saw him started on the team sheet. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag from last season, but you can't deny those stats. A scoring frequency of goals per game, 0.5 goals a game. There's a lot of strikers that are nowhere near that people would class as better. So yeah, he had it's something he can build on and hopefully get better with, because you can't deny that it's a decent start.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree anymore, Andrew. And Mitch, I know before you came on, I was talking about how you are the Cyriel Dessers #1 fan, major enthusiast. What was your overall opinion on Cyriel Dessers last season?
I think it was a very. I'm going to put a measured head on this for a minute so that I don't get too over the top there. It was a very measured first season, but a very solid, if not spectacular, first season. We've seen the foundations of the house being laid without, putting all four walls up and putting the roof on. We know that the ceiling's much higher than what he performed at last season, given some of the chances that he's missed. But we do know then that means that cause for come season 2, that we should see less misses and more hits. By proxy, he's had more time to settle in, he's more comfortable, and if we can make sure that the players around him can stay fit and don't fall by the wayside, and we can get a little bit more service to him, I think there was seeds of optimism laid for this season.
Yeah, and I suppose going into this season, then just in yourself, Mitch, do you see him kicking on this season?
Massively. I would be comfortable in saying I think Dessers will do over 30 goals this season. But 30 being the benchmark for him, I think that to me is the measuring stick for next season, over the course of this season. Of he done 25, 26 last season. I feel like 30 is the minimum expectation for this season.
And do you think that's with him potentially being moved on to penalties, depending on what happens with James Tavernier?
I think the Tav questions are cross bridges when we get there. I think for as long as Tav's here and as long as Tav's on the pitch, nobody else is going to be taking penalties, I think, if we're being sensible about that. And rightfully, I don't think anybody else should be taking them. He's earned the right with the record that he's got on pens to continue to be on pens. In the events that Tav's maybe having a rest or not in the team, that question on who goes on penalties at that point is up for debate. I think, if he goes on penalties, he's got a good record in penalties. I would say. But I would say I still expect 30 goals a season from him, irrespective of penalties.
Yeah. Listen, I think when you compare the difference in Cyriel Dessers since Philippe Clement came in compared to when he was playing under Michael Beale, I think it's probably hard to argue that there's not a chance that he can go and get 30 goals. I think a lot of that might depend on the competition that he's got within the squad as well. Will he have to play as many minutes as what he was forced to play last season, with the likes of Danilo and Enigma and potentially Lovelace, if he breaks into the squad this year and earns a place in the team? The responsibility of the scoring goals might be shared amongst the team. But I think if he does end up being the #1 striker this season, there's no reason why he can't go and kick on and get 30 goals a season with playing like a team like Rangers, as long as the service is there for him. And Dino, again, probably just sticking on the same question that I've asked the guys, what was your opinion on Dessers so far this season? And can you see an improvement in him so far this year?
No, I'll be honest. I don't think he's. I know people say these things, but he's still the same for me. a ball can't stick to him. His decision making is ridiculously poor. Celtic game, he gets the ball, we're in an attacking position, he passes the ball back. You know, you didn't want your centre forward passing it back to your defence when we're in an attacking position. You want to be going and utilising the position and the advantage that you've got. So his footballing IQ is incredibly low. I think Andrew touched on it earlier on, he seems to actually score and do better when he doesn't have time to think. As soon as he's got time to think, just makes an absolute mess of it. And when he had a good game against Ross County, everybody was singing his praises, and I was probably one of the only few that wasn't getting on the Dessers train. And then in the Old Firm, he went and proved me right that he's still the same player in my opinion. And I think you touched a good word there, Kevin. Competition. I think the competition needs to be better for him because, again, the 23 goals in however many games played last season is still an improvement to what we've actually had. But at our standards, that low now that we're celebrating 20 goals a season, we're Rangers Football Club. You know, we should be, your centre forwards should be getting 30 goals a season, in my opinion. And if Mitch is right, you know, he's got the potential to score 30 goals a season, but can he get there? Is that going to be possible? And I just can't really see it, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm. I suppose that's why we're doing this pod tonight. I think that's what makes Cyriel Dessers an enigma. I think he definitely splits opinion across the fan base. I think because he does have that sort of mixture of good things as well as bad things that he does game to game, week to week. I know, going to yourself, Mitch, I know something we were chatting about earlier on. Do you think the Dessers performances could have either been better or will be better in the future with a more consistent team around them in terms of attacking options? Obviously, we've been forced into numerous changes and chopping and changing weekly because of injuries. Do you think that's impacted Dessers?
I think it's not. I think that's probably a question that you could answer more openly than just Dessers. I think that's impacted how the managers try to implement his style of play. It's also implemented the overall how we have to play, because when you're putting square pegs in round holes in certain scenarios, you can't necessarily play the way that you want to play. And I think the key to this season, for everybody, Dessers included, is consistency in lineup and consistency and people not dropping like flies like we had last season. We'd like to hope that last year was probably that horror season that every club will have at least once in their lifetime. That horror season where you go, everybody's dropping about as if they stood in a landmine putting their shoes on, you know. And I think it can't get any worse in that respect than what it did last year. I think having the quality, you know, around him with the likes of Tierney, with the likes of Bajrami coming in, you know, with even the likes of Tom Lawrence in those, I would call it the mid-tier games, you know, he's going to have, if we can keep players like that of that quality around him and guys like Yefty banging in balls, as we all know, he fires in more crosses than a church on a Sunday there, you know, there's going to be plenty of opportunities put in front of him that, you know, he can score with the head, he can score with both feet, you know, albeit sometimes he doesn't always mean it, but he can score with pretty much any part of himself, and he's shown it time and time again. And I think having that consistency beside him, and also that increased quality from what we've brought in this summer as well, you know, I think we start to see some of the best of him.
Yeah. And Andrew, thinking of other options that we've got then up top, do you think Tav? I was reading one of the comments there that Ross had posted and just saying Tav. Do you think Dessers is our best option right now up front, or do you think Danilo or Enigma could potentially take that number one spot?
I think at the minute it's his shirt as it stands because he's the one that's been scoring goals. He's kind of made it his position, and it's up to the competition to try and work their way in there. Nobody's guaranteed a shirt, in a sense. I think with Dessers, when he has had games where he hasn't been able to play too well, I think there's been nobody even bring him off for, so he's had to just stay out there and be on the pitch when things aren't going well. Now, he's very much a phone player, in my opinion. We saw it last season where he'd have these great little spurts, like the way he started this season, a couple of goals against Ross County. Then we saw that bad decision making in the Old Firm game. Now, granted, it was offside, but nobody knew that at the time. He's in front of the keeper. He's just got to pick a spot. It's probably the easiest goal you'll probably score. And he hits it right at the keeper. That's where his head goes down. And don't get me wrong, he wasn't really getting the service in that game. It's a very different type of game, and lots of strikers have struggled up top at Parkhead. It does happen. But I do wonder now if his head's going to go down a little bit, if he's going to kind of dip in form a little bit. Granted, we've got other players we can turn to if that is happening, but it is his shirt to lose at the minute. And I would say he'd be starting the next game because he's our goal scorer currently. You know, you can't just bench him. You know, it's not the way it happens.
Definitely. And I suppose going to yourself, Mitch, then, do you think the amount of criticism potentially that Dessers gets, whether that's online or from the stands, will also have an impact on his performance overall?
I think it can't not have an impact on his performance overall. When you're the guy that the shirt is on the back and you're the guy that's fit game in, game out, you're there whether or not your body's screaming for a breather or whether or not, and let's be honest, he's not had a chance to go. Do you know what? It's a game against County. Bring me on with 20 minutes if we need me, but you know what? Let me sit this one out and we'll go and play Igamani or we'll go and play Danilo in there. He's not had that chance to take a breather over a 60 game season. And I think when it's easy to criticise the guy that's there every week, probably very much in the same vein that it is to criticise Tav, because he's the guy that's there week in, week out, fully fit, ready to go. And even if he's been held together by duct tape and hopes and prayers, you know, he's still there putting the shirt in and putting the shift in. And I think that's possibly a little bit underappreciated by a lot of people as, you know, that consistency of, it's not very often you get a striker that will play, you know, 50 plus games over the course of the season. And I can see Dino looks like he's about to chomp the inside of his lips here as I speak. What are you going to say about it, Dino? Come on, tell me.
No, I'm not. I think I'm just listening to what you're saying, Mitch, and you know, it is all subjective and stuff. But I've loaded up because I've read it before. I don't know if you'll have. I'm going to presume you have Ronald de Boer's analysis on Dessers and Danilo, the Rangers review a year past, and I'm not going to read it all, but the bit that's I'm going to read is a word that was being used, consistency, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember reading this, and then I remember thinking last season, that's probably one of the most accurate analysis I've ever read. It goes, in terms of consistency, he says, let's put it this way, if you're talking about marking players from 0 to 10, Dessers can be a 9, but he can also play like a 2. With Danilo, he will never go lower than a 6. He can also play a 9, but he would never go below a 6. With Dessers, that can happen, and it's so true. And that's why he is that enigma, because he can play like an absolute world beater, and then the next game week he's absolutely horseshit. Excuse the language, but you know what I mean. So, and that's the frustration of me, and in terms of him, and that's why I don't have much optimism for him because of that, you know. And if we have then a striker who is more consistent and is fit, is Dessers going to be involved as much? Let's be honest. If you hypothetically, if you do have a fit Danilo and Danilo's at least giving you a 6 out of 10 every week, right? Is he going to be keeping Dessers out of a game, and is Danilo going to be starting ahead of him? Do you know? So it's one of them, and you're right. He's forever Mr. Reliable, you know, and for that reason, he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet. Let's be honest, because we're absolutely riddled with injuries. Have been for as long as I can bear to remember, and he's available every single week. So that's got to, as you said, and you're all about consistency, players playing with players, building the manager's philosophy, his ethos, Ital, and we have a centre forward who can play a 9 or 1 week and a 2 the next game week. Do you know, you stick or twist, don't you?
I think I've read the De Boer tweet quote a few times there, and I think there is a lot of merit to what he says. You know, it can be a little bit probably, and this is maybe where my love for him comes as well. Now, I like a wee bit of psychopath on and off the pitch. It is a little bit bipolar football that you can get from him at times. Sometimes he can do the hard things so easily, and the easy things he makes look really difficult. And it does sometimes come down to that needing to give yourself a bit of a shake and say, do you know what, bang it first time and see what happens. As he would probably also find that a certain portion of the fan base as well gets off his back if he bangs it first time. You bang it first time that ends in rose head, fine. You've done what people asked you to do, bang it first time. But I think if you were to compare, Danilo and Dessers, I think the best way to compare it is Danilo's that Ford Focus that's there every week, time and time again, reliable, he's trusty. Whereas Danilo is probably that Ferrari that you put your foot down too hard, then you wrap it around the bollard. And that's kind of how his career's went at Rangers so far. We've seen him for 2-3 games there. Okay, he's had the setback there with the injury again, but that's him now missing another month. So you say, okay, we've got this lovely, shiny, red-hot machine that can go from 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, but we can't get the keys in the ignition. And I think that's the problem. I mean, we know Gamani, he's still going to be feeling out, and he was brought in as a project player. But I think this season, let's fast forward a month, everything goes lovely with Danilo's injury recovery, and that's him, his time in the sidelines is done. I think either as a partnership or tagging one in, one out, I think that also eases that workload in Dessers as well, and that also eases some of the tensions between that portion of the fan base and Dessers as well. And I think there's a lot of things that Dessers does both on and off the pitch, and they go probably massively underappreciated by a lot of people.
And the guys are making a good point there. And Andrew, I think looking at last season and even this season so far, we've obviously been stricken with countless amounts of injuries, but Dessers has been available for every game, not picking up a single injury for the entire last season, even when things were probably getting quite tough for him. Probably a prime example, being booed off the pitch at Ibrox. Do you think that's a positive that we can take from Cyriel Dessers, is the fact that he is always available?
I guess in a weird sort of way, yeah, because we are as Rangers fans just sick to death of the word injury. We're sick to death of seeing a player pull up on the park and go off with an innocuous injury and then see the next day a photograph of them in a hospital bed with a thumbs up. It is good to have somebody that is physically fit. See, the hate that Dessers gets is wrong, and it is wrong. It's a bit over the top because people are making comparisons to like Francis Jeffers, who were completely worse strikers. Sibo, for example, people that never really offered anything to Rangers. I know Dessers hasn't necessarily, if you look through his career and the goals he's scored, he's generally been a 15, 12, his peak kind of goals a season guy. Obviously scored, 19 and 38 last season, I think it was. He does have little spurts, little periods where he doesn't. Again, this could be where it comes into with, do you play him? Do you keep playing him through this? Now, we've got other options this season. He can come off, but then you look at the side of it where if you take him off, then he's getting less chances. He's going to score less. Now, he's not a Chris Boyd type of player where you would just wheel him out and he'll score goals, do nothing off the ball. He offers a bit more off the ball. I've even seen a few times where we've kind of went with that weird long ball kind of tactic. I haven't done it as much in the past couple of games, I think, because of the personnel changes, but there were a few times where he was able to hold it up. There's something that he adapted to because originally he wasn't able to. It just wasn't really part of his game. But then we were seeing that a little bit more. Now, granted, I don't think we should really be doing long ball. I'd rather see us with the ball on the floor, and I think that's what we will do. Now we've got different players in. But sorry, I'm ranting on here about other things. But with Dessers, he does get a lot of hate for the player he is, and he doesn't deserve that. He does score his goals. He got us out of many a hole last season, helped us qualify for the latter stages of Europe. Do I see him as the guy to lead us for the rest of the season as the main man? I don't know at the minute. I think he's got a part to play, and I think he does have a part to play for Rangers. But as our main out-and-out striker, I don't know, because there will be a period where the goals dry up for a little bit and we might have to rely on someone else. But then you can kind of manage him. You can take him off. You can keep him out of game, like I think Mitch was saying earlier about Ross County. He just had to play him. So we can manage him a bit better this season. I don't know what the return will be, though, but I think he will. Maybe 15, 20 goals, I think we'll get out of him this year, I think, personally, because we've got other options now. And that would be a good return, I think.
Yeah, I think if the goals are then shared amongst the rest of the squad, then absolutely, I think we're too reliant on both.
Can I just say something?
Cyriel, yeah, go for it, yeah.
And I'm just going to make a point here in myself personally, but I know others that feel like it is with Dessers. So you've already got fans who've got their backs up because they don't think he's good enough and he misses sitters and he does this and he does that. But sees his antics, he throwing his arms up in the air complaining and so that irritates fans even more and makes fans dislike him even more when he's doing just wee things like that. Although that's not how you should react to something like that, but fans actually find it annoying. They're already annoyed the fact that he's just missed a sitter and then he's flapping his arms about the place, like, do you know? So I know that's how it makes me feel personally. I'm like, just go on with it. Stop complaining. Just go on with it. Do you know? And score a goal for us. That's what I want you to do. So that's kind of synonymous around some Rangers fans that he is that hatred. I guess I don't hate him, but I dislike him because of those certain things. You know, and I don't want to dislike him because I know that he's got the ability to score great goals. Even I remember his pass to Matondo against PSV. That was do you know, one of the best passes I've ever seen at Ibrox. Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of where I'm at. I just wanted to
Even
make
better
that
than
point.
Scott Allen's.
Oh,
See, touching on that, Dino, just I've got the fingers on the pulse a wee bit with that comment. So the fact that he throws the arms up and he has a little nibble back every so often, which he's entitled to do. You've got 40,000 plus people breathing down your ear hole. What, for better part of another 70 minutes? You try to tell me that you wouldn't react by throwing a little arm back. See, if he didn't react like that, that would be the sign of a player that didn't want to be there.
Yeah, but it's a constant, though. It's a constant, and that's what gets people's backs up.
No,
because it's a complaint. And it's every single game, and fans don't want to see it. That's kind of back to my point.
I think some of the time, though, that you're referring to, some of the other times, it's poor refereeing decisions or refereeing decisions that have went against them, and that's general player annoyance. Some players are a little bit more expressive than others. Some will utter the inaudibles under the tongue. Some will throw a couple of arms up in the air and maybe have a little gesture towards it, towards the sides. It's different strokes for different folks on it. I think. But these, like the wee comments like that about him throwing the arms up and all that, I think this is where it comes down to the Dessers in the microscope compared to other players.
Yeah, that's my point. If he was putting the ball in the back of the net, fans wouldn't be, picking that up, that he's doing that. So they're already frustrated because he's missing sitters and he's this. So then when he's doing things like that, it's getting people's backs up. That's the point I was trying to make.
Put the ball in the net, which he's done as the top scorer as a team last season. So how many others chipped in with 20 plus?
He was the only fit centre forward.
But across the rest of the forward line and the wings, from our centre attacking midfielder, we had no other. We barely had 20 goals from the rest. But
that's a whole different.
See where I'm going with that, though. It's easy to point the finger at the guy that's there because he's there every week.
I'm just trying to give you a point of view how fans think. So, and I was just really going on back of what Andrew said about fans hating him and stuff. And these things add to it. That's the point I was just trying to make.
And I think that's again just highlighting the reason for the pod. I think he's one of these players that definitely splits the opinion more than any other player that I can remember in the past, even in my lifetime. Where he can do some amazing things and he can also equally do some frustrating things as well. Andrew touched on a point earlier, and also Ross had posted a good question and it got me thinking of comparisons to other players. Ross had posed a question, and Dino, I'm actually going to go to yourself for this, mate. So Ross has posted a question, either Dessers or Čolak. What would your opinion be in that?
Čolak.
And why Čolak over Dessers?
Because Čolak was night and day more clinical than Dessers. So I That's simple answer for me. And I know for a fact if Cholak's got a chance, it's going in the back of the net. They put money on it every time.
And I suppose I'll go round the room then. Andrew, I could tell you're wanting to jump in, mate. If you want to jump in, what's your opinions on that?
See,
Question.
I've got a pal I play football with who's a Pauk fan. And around the time that we were rumoured to be signing him, he said, he'll score goals, but then it will drop off a cliff. Now, he got us into the Champions League. He had a very good spell with us early on. But the question I would put to everybody is, where is he now? And that's the thing, because we have this romanticism with some players, and I get it. I totally get it. You know, I like Cholak. He was a quick finisher. The ball's there. He would seem to score it. He really did enjoy scoring. But when he went to Parma, he had about 3 goals in 22 games. I think, where is he now? Is it Spezia? I can't remember now. But he's somewhere, but he's not scoring goals now. I think he might be in the Italian second division or somewhere now. He's somewhere. Yeah, so I would say that. Where is he now? He's always been, and granted, scored some good goals for us. Could he have continued that? I don't know. It's all if, what's, buts, and maybes. There were games towards the end of his time at Rangers where he didn't play that well. Fans were getting frustrated with him. Granted, there was lots going on because we seem to go every few weeks and there's some sort of bin fire in the corner that we need to deal with. But personally, I think Cholak is probably the epitome of a form player, if I'm being honest. So,
and Mitch, just before I come to you with the exact same question, actually, that Ross had posed between the two, everyone in the comments, feel free to cast your vote upon who you would prefer as well, and we can try and get a general consensus of the listeners and what their opinions between Cholak and Dessers would be also. But for yourself, Mitch, what would your preference be?
We all know there's only one answer there, and it's going to be CD9 every day of the week. Cholak, when he was here, was great, and I would call him, he was a rock steady signing. It was the solid, not spectacular, but he also overperformed at the start of his time with us. Versus when you look at the rest of his career before joining Rangers, I think he was the one that, if you say, do you know what, we stuck our finger in the air, the wind blew the right way, and it went really well for him. But as Andrew said, those last, that I would probably say even the last kind of 10 games, probably towards the end of his time, there was times where you looked at Cholak and he looked like he was just running about as a body, just let the body run with no brain behind the ears. No disrespect to him or anything, but as Andrew's also very rightly pointed out, he went off to Sierra B after coming to us, and he scored, 3 goals in about 22, 23 games or something out there. Like, if the answer to the question is Cholak, then I don't want to know the question in the first place.
Cool. Fair point. And Dino, probably if we were to try and do a comparison then between what Dessers offered Rangers and maybe the likes of Alfredo Morelos, who was our last proper recognised fan favourite, number 9, what do you think the difference between they two are, and what do you think Morelos potentially even gave more compared to Dessers?
Morelos could hold the ball up and bring others into play. He was very good at that. He had that nasty edge, that streak about him, which he played on the line, didn't he? In terms of being able to boss defenders, ragdolling was used a lot during his time. Albeit he didn't get himself in as many chances as what Dessers does, so probably Dessers in that sense has got better off the ball movement and things like that. And Morelos half the time was probably not fit enough, and that's something Dessers brings to his game. He's far fitter than Morelos. Like when Morelos was getting subbed off, it was soaking with sweat. Dessers, is if once he finishes the game, you could probably go another 90 minutes. He's that fit, so that's something that obviously he brings to his game that Morelos couldn't bring. So if Morelos had half the chances that Dessers did, that Morelos maybe would have had more goals. But yeah, Morelos didn't really take 10 touches to have a shot as well, did he? So didn't chop it inside out and then hit a shot. So there's that as well. So it's a good comparison. But Dessers brings more to the game in some aspects, and Morelos some aspects. If you could merge them both into one striker, that'd make for one hell of a striker. That's for sure.
And Andrew, Paul, I asked you a similar question just about the criticism of Dessers earlier on. Do you think that Cyriel Dessers gets too much unnecessary criticism, or do you think that Morelos just never got as much as he potentially deserved at times? So I think we had similar problems with Morelos to the extent where he rarely scored against Celtic. Obviously picked up a lot of suspensions, especially in his earlier seasons with Gerrard, and was also heavily unreliable towards the end of his time at Rangers. What's your opinion on that?
I think with the Morelos thing, Morelos struggled to get that monkey off his back, didn't he, with scoring against Celtic to the point where it got in his head. That cup final where we're dominating, they score an offside goal, and then he's got the penalty, the chance to actually break that duck, and then it just doesn't happen. Morelos, like Dino said there, very good at holding up the ball, bringing other players into play, especially in Europe, and he was an animal in Europe. We really had him at his peak. With Dessers, I think a big part of the reason he has a lot of missed chances is because he's in the right positions to have them chances that I think a lot of other strikers don't. If you watch him off the ball, he is very clever, very intelligent in that respect. Granted, he has also scored against Celtic. He has done that. So he's kind of broke that duck, that hoodoo, so to speak. So he's not kind of got to get that off his back. Granted, at the same time, he's had kind of 2 one-on-ones where he's obviously, sadly, the one at Parkhead last year when he was running down and bearing down on goal, I actually knew at that moment he wasn't going to score it. He had too much time to think about it. And of course, I think Johnson was ended up getting the ball off him. And I don't know how, because he was about 2 yards in front of him. But again, that was his decision making. Now, are we at a point now where he's not able to change his decision making, or is that something he can work on? Is it too ingrained now? I don't know. If you get the ball in the box, if things aren't going well, if we get head height balls into the box, I think he scores most headers because I think it's an instinctive thing. He is a striker at the end of the day. He will score those. I really do think he will, because with headers, he does score them. But again, then you look at the Batiste goal that I mentioned earlier. He had all the time in the world with that, and it was such a high pressure situation, and he dealt with that perfectly. I don't know. That's why he's the Enigma, isn't he? He's just the Enigma. He's a goal scorer. If the ball's coming across to him and you can just smash it home, he will do that. And he's very good at doing that. If he's got to sometimes take one touch, two touch, he's capable of it. But sometimes he takes that one touch too many. We've seen it where he cuts in, then takes a touch, takes it round. But I think there's a lot of other players in the team that are guilty of that as well. We're not as direct. I think we try and score the perfect goal sometimes where we just need to be trying to score goals. But sorry, it's a really long-winded way of trying to answer your question there. But yeah, I think that just kind of goes to show for me, it's not necessarily all about Dessers. I think it is what's around him. I think with him getting that kind of, he scored in high pressure games. Granted, Morelos did that as well, but when it came to the Old Firm, it took about 14 games for him to do that. Dessers has done that already. Next game at Ibrox, hopefully he can bag a winner. I think that'll do his confidence great, because I think the outlook and the way that people look at, because somebody did mention this in the comments, if Dessers would have scored at Parkhead last week, I think they wouldn't be I think he would have silenced a few critics, especially if it would have been a winning goal, let's say. But some of these high profile misses do stick in the mind, especially the 2 one-on-ones at Parkhead, I think.
Yeah, I think as they begin to rack up as well, the more that come, the more that people remember. And I think that'll probably move us on to the next stage, which is the ability to trust Dessers in these important games. And Mitch, I'm going to come to you because I'm hoping to get some criticism of Dessers out of you. tonight, even though you are an
Not on
enthusiast.
my watch.
And we've obviously been talking a lot about comparisons to ex-Rangers players, but making a comparison to our counterparts across the city, when we've got Kyogo, for example, in Old Firm fixtures, most recent one where he scored in a 3-0 victory for Celtic. And if we look at Dessers' contribution across the last 5 Old Firms, he scored 1 goal out of that 5, in comparison to Kyogo, who scored 3 out of the 5 and seems to be fairly prolific against us. What do you think is the problem for Dessers in these games? Because he certainly is getting the chances. I think when you compare it to the amount of chances that Kyogo's getting in these games, they're fairly similar, if not more, but he's unable to convert them.
I think the stats don't necessarily tell a full story there, because we all know what happened in the September game where he got the goal wrongfully chopped off. So I think stats can say anything you want stats to say. I think when it comes down to can you trust Dessers, you look at, has he scored in Europe for us? Yes. Has he scored in high pressure games for us? Yes. Has he scored in Old Firm games for us? Yes. He's ticked all the boxes. Has he scored at international level at high profile games? Yes. I think almost comparing Dessers to Kyogo, for example, it's like comparing apples and oranges in a lot of respects about the players around them and the quality of service to them. You know, you look at, Clement said it himself, that the Celtic team across the road have, they've been put together now, nearly 3 years probably solidly. If we say the core group of players have been there for kind of 2-3 years, but they were also brought in as kind of 22, 23 hungry, youngly talented players. Around our squad, we've had the opposite. We've had players that have came in nearly, 28, 29 at the back end of their careers, or knocking on the door, and we've said, the doctor, can we fix you? And we've seen how we've reaped what we've sown in that respect. And I think now we're at the start of a new cycle, and there's going to be a lot of feeling out around it. So if you ask me, can we trust Dessers? He's already got the track record there based on last season to say that he's done it. Frequently enough, as Doug's just touched out, that's maybe the more slightly open-ended part of the debate. Could he do it a bit more frequently? Absolutely. Could he do it a bit more frequently better with a bit better help around him? Yes, but that's also not meaning it's also not the job of the players around him to spoon feed him every opportunity. Sometimes as a striker, you need to dig your heels in and do some hard yards as well. So if you want a little bit of criticism from me about him, I will say probably could be a little bit more clinical in the bigger games, a little bit more frequent, become a frequent flyer in those games.
Mm-hmm. And just on Doug's point there, do you think if last season Dessers showed more consistency in these big games, in the Old Firms in particular, do you think that could have been a difference in where the league title went last season?
It could have had an impact for sure. And I appreciate what you said there, Mitch, that goal that got wrongfully chopped off. Still, it was only given him another goal, still behind Kyogo, isn't he? And my sort of way of looking at it is that, you're given the chance, you'd hate to say it, but I'd have Kyogo in my team over him. I think Kyogo actually only turns up for Old Firm games these days, doesn't he? So, however, in terms of Dessers, I think the last season he definitely showed us all that he's capable of doing it in the in those games. And if that goal goes in, if that goes allowed against Celtic, that could let's be honest, it's hypothetical, but it could have changed his trajectory at Rangers if that was allowed. That it could have his path at Rangers could have been completely different if that goal was allowed. Let's be honest, that's an accurate hypothesis to make, but that goal didn't go in. So imagine the dent in that did do the man's confidence and the man's sort of we don't know what could have happened and it could have had an impact on where the title was at the end of the season. Definitely, Kevin.
see, touching on that, just to throw that back, I think when you say obviously what impact it had on him, obviously when it was chalked off, and I think anyone that working eyes knows that it was chalked off incorrectly.
Aye.
I think the problem, potentially one of the big problems, and maybe why it festered so long, was we had a man in the dugout at that point that, let's be honest, was an inexperienced manager that hasn't ever been in that situation before. So if the person in the dugout isn't experienced enough to help, then you look around at the backroom staff then at that point, his backroom staff, and I think had it been Clement and Alec Ray and everybody else that was there, you go, these are guys that have been in the trenches, been in that situation, they've had goals locked off, or they've had teammates with goals locked off. Whereas you look around and you say, Mick Beale kind of had a couple of glorified PE teachers on there beside him, you know, and you go, which one of those guys is going to take Dessers aside on the Saturday or the Sunday, Monday morning and say, right, big man, it's happened. It happens to the besties. Go out there, rattle in a couple more in training, get the yips out of the system, and give him that cuddle that he maybe needs, or give him a kick up the backside if that's what he needs. You know, whatever thing it is that he responds to. But whereas you look at it and you go, what? We had Harry Wallen, for example, and he was just a glorified PE teacher. Like, he came from, what, 6th tier down south or something before he came up here. You go, these were guys who never had that, with the exception of the assistant manager. These guys hadn't been in the trenches before to kind of pick players up out of that situation. So you wonder, psychologically, did the coaching team potentially help with that, and did that also leave a slightly bigger burden on him than maybe needed?
Yeah, aye. And can I just say one thing quickly? See this lip service from Clement about the Celtic players have been there longer together, and that being a reason. Like when we won the league and their Australian manager came in, they then had a brand new whole team. They went and won the league. So I'm no in for buying that the narrative that he's trying to spin. I just wanted to add that. So I don't think that plays on much, if you ask me, given what happens across the city. It never seems to be a concern for them. So anyway, just wanted to say that.
Yeah. And to be fair, there's been a lot of people saying similar things in the comments over the last sort of 10 minutes or so. Yeah, I think probably on that comparison, I think although, yeah, they have been together for a long period of time, I think they did come in with a clear style of play, and you can see what they were trying to do right from the offset. And with the likes of Kyogo, who we were just comparing there, I think he made an immediate impact. I think he'd landed like in Scotland, like less than 24 hours before playing, and scored straight away and sort of kicked on since. Just I'm short of time as well. Andrew, just your opinion on that as well. Do you think that Cyriel Dessers can be trusted either just in our standard games or especially within the bigger games, whether that be against Celtic or in Europe on a consistent basis?
Consistent basis, that is the question. It's hard to know. I think we'll get a better idea of that over the next few months with our Europa League run, because there's some fantastic games in there. There's some difficult games, but some good games. Now, to compare Dessers and Kyogo there was plenty of Wolfram games last season that Kyogo didn't really have a sniff in the game, didn't really do much, but he'll pick the ball up 25 yards out, look up at goal scorer. That's the main difference. And to be fair, I think he's in a different level completely when it comes to goal scoring. But yeah, I think Dessers has what it takes. I think good coaching, working with him on the training pitch, helping him to just move the ball quicker when he's and just not get stuck, pick a spot, stay with it, go for that spot. Because I think it's the extra touches and stuff that breaks him down and slows him down. There was a few times in a couple of our presses at Parkhead last week where we started to move the ball around well, then the ball from Dessers would go straight back. Not all necessarily his fault. He's got nobody up there with him at times because of the way we play. Somebody put in a comment there, which was perfect, the way that Celtic play with their wingers. They're right up to the byline, cutting the ball across every time. It's the same thing. It's repeat. We can barely get to the byline at times. It's through balls that are going through and he's offside, But, can he be the guy we rely on? It is possible. I think there is a player in there, but you know what it's like. Will it happen? It will depend on this Europa run. I think, personally. And chances are going to be few and far between, especially at places like Old Trafford, even though Man U aren't exactly in the best form at the minute either. But yeah, there's a possibility. I wouldn't put my house on it yet, though.
Yeah. And just to wrap up the pod, guys, I'm going to ask each of you to sum up Dessers in a few words. And just to sign off, Mitch, we'll start off with yourself. If you can sum up Dessers in a few words.
The ultimate enigma.
Perfect. And thank you
I
for
had,
coming
to,
on.
I had to keep that PG there because Dino knows there's so many other places that could have went.
And thank you as always, Mitch, for coming on. And Dino, what about yourself, mate?
Consistently inconsistent.
I'll speak to you
Perfect.
after.
And again, Dino, thank you very much, mate, for coming on. And
Thanks,
Andrew,
mate.
what about yourself, mate?
Mitchell like this one. The Rangers striker.
That's the one.
I was always told if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all. But yeah, I'll go with that. The Rangers striker.
Yeah, I think a few people in the comments were relating to him being the only option, which has been the sort of story of
The Lone
Cyriel
Ranger.
Dessers season last season. And Andrew, again, just to plug your channel, guys, thank you for coming on, but if everyone can go and drop Andrew a follow as well at the Ibrox channel podcast, that would be appreciated. And guys, everyone, thank you for joining in. Thank you for listening. And just one big ask from me, if everyone can like and subscribe, and also check out the membership scheme as well, which you'll find in the bio. But after that, other than that, every night is a Rangers Journal night. Thank you very much.